Storytelling is so key to who we are as people. At its core, it's about connecting humans and, just being together, and that's the power of a story.
If you are open to what you're going to encounter, you are not going to be the same person that you were at the start of this reading if you haven't read these books before. Because if you listen to what people are saying, you are going to have a different perspective on some of these issues.
My dream is just to live in a better world that's better for the animals that live in it and the people that live in it.
I'm interested in people. I think that some writers who are more interested in ideas than in people, but I think that fiction functions best when it can make us on a human level.
When people come together, ideas come together. Ideas and influences mingle, and what you have is cross-pollination. It's shared dreams, it's shared ideas. What's not to love?
Welcome to the Sculpture Court Theatre. I'm Michael Pedersen. I'm going to be interviewing, chatting to Irvine tonight. I've just had written on my clipboard, thank you to the Centre for Open Learning who sponsored this event tonight. So high praise to them. And high praise to you for filling all those seats. It is the last day of the festival. This is the
in Edinburgh, it's still the sexiest audience ever. Look at you. You're gorgeous. Every one of you.
So we're here tonight to talk about Irvine's new book, The Long Nights. By my calculations, and by the notes I've been given in his books by bibliography, his 13th novel and his 17th work of fiction. On top of that, he's produced drama writing, screenplays, short stories, even a poem. As if that wasn't enough, he's now a DJ, branching out into musical theatre, has his work adapted for radio, TV, film and theatre. One quote reads, "Welsh has produced many imitators, but few equals, and he has outlasted them all." Some call him a literary icon, others simply call him a top shagger. Let's hear it one more time for the incredible Irvine Welsh. So Long Nights is your first book since 2017?
Yeah, I think it was 2017 or 18 that Dead Men's Trousers came out. I'd actually finished another book, and then I thought, I'll jump back and do, lockdown, there's no point in bringing anything out, so then I'll just do another one again. And it seems sequentially to fall before the one that I'd done. So that was great, so now there'll be like kind of buses, you'll get loads of them coming at once.
And it's part of a trilogy, but it's part of a trilogy that's also had a TV series mixed into it, and it sort of spills into the other worlds within some of your other books, but they actually just went into filming for this today, did they not, in Edinburgh?
It's nuts. The book came out on Thursday and it started filming today, which is kind of, it's 3 days. It's unheard of. We usually have to wait 15 years to get something translated into film. I mean, the first one, Trainspotting, was 3 years, and I kind of got spoiled, and I think this is how it's going to be for them all. But it wasn't like, it didn't happen that way. But now, Series 2 of Crime kind of being filmed on, with this book. Just 3 days, I'm really spoiled now. I'll be expecting this all the time.
So that's the thing, you've not even publicly read from this book, and they're already out on the streets with the actors doing the big scenes.
I don't even have a copy of it. So if somebody's got a copy, they can lend me a little bit so I can read it, but that'd be great.
But I guess the thing that links them all together under the crime banner is the central protagonist of it all, D.I. Ray Lennox. Now, we've seen him in Crime in 2008, we've seen him in the BritBox series recently on crime. Tell us a bit about Ray Lennox before we arrive at the start of this book. Who is he? Is he a hero? Is he an anti-hero? Are we invested in him?
I think he's sort of, in a way, like most of us, he's trying to do the right thing, but stumbling blindly through a very kind of a rapidly changing world, which he doesn't quite understand, and trying to sort of make the most of that and come to terms with that in his own way. And I see him as I don't see him as a cop really, I see him as an avenging angel in a way, a guy who is a child who was abused and who sort of hunts down abusive sex criminals. That's his whole thing. He's not really interested in somebody who's shoplifting or kind of fighting at football or something like that. He doesn't really regard these as crimes. He's more interested in sort of kind of hunting down kind of predators, for want of a better term. So that's his modus operandi, and he believes that by doing that he can exercise the demons of his own personal abuse, which obviously he can't. So he's on this kind of doomed quest, and he sees this as a way of this is his kind of life's mission, really. And because of that, he's much more intense and much more fucked up, I suppose, than most of the kind of jobs work bureaucrats around him. They're more organisation men who've kind of made some kind of peace with the fact that they're in an organisation which is about enforcing the laws of the state, basically, about kind of protecting the private property of the bourgeoisie, for want of a better term. And that's what, that doesn't really sit well with him. He wants to solve serious crimes rather than to be involved in that game. So he's in this kind of very schizophrenic role vis-a-vis the organisation. He's also in a very ambivalent role vis-a-vis his own family. So that's basically who he is. He's a kind of stranger in a strange land. He's a sort of fish out of water. He doesn't quite fit into any one scene.
But I feel like, especially some of the police work in the book was pretty intricate. It's almost like you've been moonlighting at Sessions Police Station for a while. Particularly some of the more nuanced details, like every senior member of the police brigade seemed to be a Hearts fan, which you knew a bit about.
Well, that doesn't take a big leap of imagination. You don't have to do much research for that. Just go along to the Edinburgh Masonic Club and you'll see all these places. But yeah, I mean, I don't really do much research. I kind of hate research. It's kind of boring and I'm too busy. And I'm not really excited by it. So what I do is I usually write something as I think it would be in terms of your writing procedures and all that. I'll write a procedure that makes sense to me. I think this is the way. If I was a cop, this is how we conduct an investigation. And usually, when you hand a book in for editing, somebody will say, "Oh, we don't actually do it that way." And I usually kind of overrule them and say, "Well, I'm going to do it that way in my world. It's fiction, for fuck's sake." I don't want to authenticate every detail. I want to create a world from my own imagination. And I'm not really that bothered about the exact kind of procedural stuff and all that. How they, whether they have to fill in this form before they kind of, for expenses, or whether they have to just, or they do it online or whatever. That doesn't interest me at all. I'm not bothered about that.
Yeah. And one thing that really interests me about a lot of your characters is this, like, ferocity and brutality of them. A lot of them are not good people. You wouldn't want them going out with someone you love. But some come across, despite all those flaws, as pretty good friends. Pretty good in the camaraderie world of it, and Lennox in The Long Nights is no exception to this. There's this quite almost beautiful friendship that develops between him and a wayward London cop. I think they were marrying up Edinburgh and London there, called Hollis. And are you conscious of writing that male allegiance, that male camaraderie, those redeeming qualities of friendship into what are quite, bastard boyfriends at the same time?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, I like to get people and get characters that are in extreme situations. I like to get, when things when they're going through a crisis, the life belts that they grab in that time of crisis is actually made out of lead and kind of pushes them further down into the seabed. You know, it's like, I mean, if somebody has a loss, like a divorce or a kind of relationship breakdown, or they have a bereavement of somebody close to them, the first thing they do is the worst thing they can possibly do is they go to the pub, you know, and they get drunk and they phone for some cocaine and get smashed, and then they get into all, you know, their mental state is frail enough as it is, and then they go into some other weird scenario whereby they fuck the life up even more and all that thing. You know, so you make things worse with the decisions that you make when you're vulnerable. You're not making the right kind of decisions because you're not really in a position to. And that's the thing. To me, that's a dramatic mechanism. You know, you don't really. There's no fiction. There's no drama when things are going right and people are making the right decisions. It's when people make wrong decisions and fuck up, and it's when people kind of, you know, it's like we've all seen. Like the guy, or for that matter, the woman who've kind of come out of a relationship and they go through that kind of, you know, all guys are bastards, like all women are fucking horrible and all this, you know, they go into this kind of weird thing. And that it just makes them more unlovable, basically, you know, to whoever their prospective kind of, you know, their prospective next romance would be. But you know, these are sort of, I like to get people at these moments, you know, I like to get people at crisis moments when they're jumping into something and looking for the inappropriate kind of life belts, you know, things that aren't really going to help them, because that kind of propels the drama.
But yeah, there's so much pain in a lot of these characters' lives, and every text that you hope they won't send, they do in these moments of desperation. And every person you don't want them to bump into when they're doing their foulest thing, they do bump into. And you sort of play that drama so extraordinarily, but you juxtapose it with a real trope of humour throughout the book, and that sort of keeps their head above water in some situations where you feel like they might have sunk deeper and further and more brutally earlier on. So how do you balance that, the misery and the humour?
Well, you kind of have to see the ridiculousness of these situations as well, you know. I mean, no matter how much kind of pain and anguish we're in, we're all pretty ridiculous and pretty kind of daft when we come to these, when we're in that kind of position, you know. And you find the darkest of humour in these things, you know. You kind of, it's usually in your kind of darkest moments that you find the greatest humour. You know, you have all these jokes that you hear at funerals, all these jokes that you hear when people are kind of really ill and all that. They're kind of, you know, they're not about, you know, humour isn't about laughter or finding something funny or sharing something that's funny. It's often about a release of tension. And when you use humour in a book, it gives the reader and yourself as a writer permission to look at intolerable material, you know, it's like, or kind of darker material. So if you're reading something, you're going like, and then when something comes along that's quite funny, you have that release, you know, you just think, this is almost unbearable, I can't look at another page, and then suddenly it changes, and you just laugh, you know, you laugh your tits off, basically. And a lot of that laughter is about that reduction of tension. And then you kind of reset in your mind, and you can get back into it again. You get back into looking at the stuff that you kind of found quite difficult to look at just a few minutes before.
Yeah. So this is not a drill. So I'm going to ask Irvine to do a reading in a minute. We had neither have a book on the table, or Irvine has a book on his lap. So I'm going to ask him another question, and if by chance a book did appear at the front of the stage, that might be quite handy.
It works already. You've manifested it.
Plus, if you get that signed afterwards, it's, you know, the performance book. It's like getting a copy of the script from that perspective. So, a lot of your books have quite dramatic introductions. You pilot us into the drama, the brutality, the ferocity of it quite quickly. But this one's sort of up there of how dark, how fast a book can go. In terms of a prologue, it certainly made me sit back down on my seat. So, do you want to either tell us a little bit about how the book opens, or do a quick reading for us?
Probably better than a reading.
Nice to see you brought the book as well.
I'm always prepared, Michael, you know that. Right, so, yeah, prologue. He's stripped to his boxer shorts, secured to the moulded plastic chair, wrists and ankles strained white against the ties, dimpled goose flesh trembling. Apart from those candy-striped underpants, there's just one other item that he wears, the brown leather hood that we pulled over his head. But he's soundless now, as I watch him from the other end of the large, empty warehouse. I mirror his silence as I sit down in a similar chair in order to study him from afar. You're always a student. In this game, as in life, there is no absolute knowledge. All you have are your own experiences, what you observe and infer through your senses, nourished hopefully with a little imagination. And of course, that quality his class of people is painfully deficient in, empathy. Most of this time, this deficit seems to serve them well in a limited way, as they blunder on chasing their bottom lines and profit margins, stunningly unaware that they are also part of the world that they are systematically fucking up. How do I put myself in the shoes of this shivering figure? Well, let me give it a try. I am in a completely terrifying environment over which I have no control. I can see nothing through the suffocating hood covering my head and face except a sliver of my own body and the timber floor of the warehouse. This cladding oddly makes the captive look sinister, as if he is the oppressor. But no, he's totally in our power. I don't know how I'm doing here, but it's obvious he's not in a good place. Frankly, it's not even comfortable for me as much as I'm glad to be in my circumstances rather than his. It's like nausea is rising inside me. Will it worsen if I get closer? I stand up and walk towards him, almost tiptoeing across the floorboards to maintain silence, speculating that every step closer might furnish me with more information as to his emotional state. Yes, once again he strains against the bonds. It's futile. His wrists and ankles are as if welded to the hard chair. His arms are white and flabby through indolence and decadence. Now the sinews strain demonically in them, across his oddly sculpted shoulders, under his wobbling boy tits. Beneath his moonless amice, I'm guessing that fireworks are going off. The thin leather buckles inwards as he inhales, his tongue maybe intermittently pushing it out as he tastes the skin of dead animal. Maybe he screws his eyes down to that vague source of light underneath his chin. Yes, a chink of it spilling in through the slash in the mask, cut there to let the oxygen in. Now he's obviously marshalling himself. This is exciting, as he tenses his body further, sucking in deeply, then bellowing, "What the fuck?" Not the first shout-out since he woke, but once again he only hears his muffled voice ricochet coldly around the huge and cavernous space. He must be thinking of how he got there, what this dramatic disturbance in his existence constitutes. My call, urging him to come back, to return to a place he was done with, apart from the visits to his sister, in order to see the kids. Now he's still again. I retreat, maintaining my silence from the corner of the capricious space, sinking back into my chair. He must be so cold, his flesh is pulsing in the raw dank air. I know from my own experience how you still notice these minor horrors, even if you splash around in a sea of abject terror. I'd like to discuss this with him, but I'm wary of slipping into the torturer's indulgence of gloating torment. This is not a game we're playing. Above all, it would feed the lie that this was about him. He is not, and never will be, the narrator of this tale. This is not the final chapter. It's just the last chapter that this particular character will feature in. Men like him usually tell the story in business, politics, the media, but not this time. I repeat, he is not writing this story, and this abdication is unwittingly at his own bequest. And she's probably the very last person he would think about, even less than me with my personal nemesis, whom we sadly only managed to incapacitate. As one gets older, the atrocities of childhood grow more vivid than those in adolescence and adulthood. But to such men, we will just be obscure pieces of collateral damage in a warehouse full of souls they've ruined and impaired through the selfish meeting of their own immediate base needs. He is not writing the story. She enters, looking magnificent in check trousers, trainers and a short coat, but she slips off, revealing a ready-for-business tank top. Her limbs are lean and gym-toned, her hair pinned up under her flat cap. In her hand, the tool bag that means this cannot end well for him. Or we've learned from the last time. The slip of the plastic draft excluder on the door must have registered, even on the other side of that stifling hood. She smiles, touches my shoulder. I rise from this old chair. We walk slowly across the floorboards towards him, a creak on one of the boards. His body tenses again as he pushes back in the seat. Now he can hear the sound of footsteps, somebody creeping closer as he's thinking, perhaps there's more than one of them. Who's there? Who is this? His voice is softer, more tentative now. We walk slowly around him, so close he must feel our presence shimmer. It's not the heat, it's just the aura of other human beings in his proximity. He smells something. His sinuses whine softly under the mask as he tries to ascertain what it is. Perhaps old books. Is he in a library? Her perfume, unique and rare. It's called Dead Writers, originally inspired by novelists like Hemingway and Poe. The black tea, vanilla, and heliotrope notes do actually make it smell like an old drawing room stuffed full of antique books. Not a lot of women would have the balls to wear such a fragrance, but not a lot of women or men have her balls. If he ever did, that would very soon cease to be the case. What do you want? Look, I have money. His muffled voice trails up into a plea. We respond with a silence so thick he must feel it clog his lungs, drowning him. He's brought this on himself. Again, it's a man for the children. All he ever did was set self-indulgent traps for them to get through, testing their loyalty. And he nearly repaired the last mess, almost convinced her to join him in London to make a go of it again on a bigger stage where he was reascended. Oh yes, we know everything about him. Neither of us are gamblers by nature. The more research you do, the surer something is. Know their vanities and their weaknesses. Help them to fall on their own swords. When all's said and done, that's what they really crave. That drama of utter disgrace and humiliation. It's the most compelling chapter of the narcissist's biography. What they're always working towards, in face of whatever nonsense they choose to delude themselves with. How he must hate himself right now. The test of weakness that led him here. His punishment at the hands of a force he can't understand. How much self-loathing must that induce? He'll soon be free of it all. It's time. Her head turns sharply to me, eyes suddenly set with a luminous ferocity. She moves, flop helplessly between his legs, with the jerking convulsions of his body ebbing and flowing and the nervous gurgling. Irene was scared, but perhaps also hopeful. While this alludes to the darkest contravention, it also hits a harmless, if potentially humiliating rugby club prank, so beloved of the darker elements on the fringes of this circle. I know this feeling. Could this babbling yet erupt into a collusive chuckle? The Evans, the Alistairs, the Murdos, the Roddies, those bloody cards. He would take this right now, but something freezes him again. Maybe it's her scent, it says something else. Stop, he pleads, his high voice breaking, possibly reminding him of his school days. Perhaps he'd be walking home in his uniform, running into a group of council estate boys, or council schemes as they call him here. They call him here, from a nearby comprehensive. He would take delight in punching his fat arms, dancing around him in a morbid revelry at the marks they caused, knowing they would bruise. That was a long time ago. He'd made himself a different man. The victimhood had been shed with the flab. Of course there was a sloth of complacent middle age in his career, first-class travel, lavish expenses, late nights, and he reverted to the appetizing version of himself we see now. The burgeoning corpulence exemplified by the white ball of gut, the fleshy jowls capitulating to gravity, and those moves an infant could suckle on. But it didn't matter. Now he was a winner who could buy beautiful women. Yes, he'd stepped on a few toes. I wonder if he's trying to think which ones. The terrible problem he had with that Graham character, the dark urge he had to satisfy, it almost ruined him. Now her, now me. Surely not. She wouldn't be on his radar after all this time. And sure enough, he asked with sudden inspiration, "Is this about the Samuels contract? There's no need to." "No!" He squeals out as her hands, covered in latex gloves, touch him. He can feel the thin, gossamer rubber stickiness, and his penile skin retracts under their graze. "No!" And I play my part simply by laying my own hand on his shoulder. He recoils, and I wager he's never felt such a cold touch. The uncompromising pulse of terror surges so keenly through his body, sparking it into a tensile spasm, that I'm briefly concerned the ties will snap under the power it fuses through him. But there's no way. It just slashes him deeper into his wrists and ankles. I lift my brandishing hand, leaving his body to the air that stings his exposed floppy cock and balls. Her evaluating touch, strangely gentle, is now also gone, leaving a vacuum of even greater discomfort. But not for long. We're not going to make the same mistake twice. Again, I touch him without touching him. Nobody has a frostier caress than me. His prick literally contracts a further inch under it. She is warmer for sure, not that he will feel any benefit, as she starts wrapping the leather strap round his genitals, applying the devastating tourniquet. Turns the wooden handle to pull it tautly. "Please!" He feels the noose tighten. "Don't, please," he says softly this time in response to the twisting pain. And yes, there's a brief sense of arousal. He knows these games and the infliction of sexual pain on others, even if he was always the one in control. But not now. Now he's experiencing air escaping from his lungs as the sweat and tears roll down his cheeks, dripping onto his chest and under the hood as his penis indulges with the blood trapped in it. Then I open the case and she removes the 6-inch knife. Then the cut. A beautiful motion as the blood spurts out. She pulls at his cock and hatch, but it won't come away. His loud, pig-like squeals. We never bargained for this. The knife was razor sharp. But we are prepared. We dispense with the ceremonial blade as I produce a serrated one from the bag and hand it to her. Through his spluttering blood and cries, I feel mildly deflated. Father's knives have once again proven deficient to my task of vengeance. But this doesn't last, as under her frantic sawing, the muscles in her arm pumped, his genitals finally snap away in her hand. Eureka! Is he, I wonder, experiencing a strange relief, a giddy lightness in brain and body as something burdening is whipped from him, perhaps just before he senses it will never return, because she's holding it aloft, that beautifully grotesque scopy, as he ascertains that this is not an encumbrance that's been removed from him, but something close to the very essence of who he is, An animal squeal like nothing I have heard before. It bellows out from under the mask, holds its pitch in a resonant drill as he slumps forward, perhaps hoping that his unconsciousness will deliver him from the pain. Maybe he's praying for the blessed liberation of death, anything to take him into a different realm. And he surely must feel that this is happening, but only after many more screaming heartbeats in purgatory. She holds the genitals at arm's length, regarding them, then him, before dropping them into the plastic box. Does he sense the whiff of perfume? If so, it's soon overwhelmed as he shouts out through the burning inferno of pain that disintegrates his spirit a familiar name: LENNOX! Thanks for listening, folks. Tell me his name. Mark.
Bit of an interactive signing for you, Mark. Not named after Mark Renton, are you? So I don't think it's a spoiler to say that at one point in the book a certain genitalia is actually found strung up in the Walter Scott monument, and a dismembered member might slap in the face an unsuspecting American tourist going to explore the history of Walter Scott. Thank you very much for that. We've obviously, this is a crime trilogy, but we've seen LENNOX appear before in FILTH. And I think there's a lot of universe spill or character spill within your books. There's a Voyage to London at one point by the DIs, and they bump into one Simon Williamson there, an associate of Frank Begbie. So in terms of these being trilogies, they very much break out the boxes into some of your other novels as well. So what's the thinking behind the character spill of the books?
I think when if you've written a lot of books, you have all these characters, and you're interested in them and what's happened to them. So it's nice to give a little window into what they're doing. And it also saves a bit of time. You they're like kind of tools in a box basically. And if you've got a kind of job, you want to do a theme, you look into that box and you say, this will do for this particular thing here, and it saves you kind of. Right in the guy was a kind of psychotic narcissistic from such and such, and you have to create this whole character from scratch. You've already got him there. You're a sick boy, basically.
So Trainspotting came out in '93 as a book?
Yeah.
Yeah. And am I right in saying that from Trainspotting up until Dead Men's Trousers, over that entire literary career, you've worked pretty much with the same editor?
Yes, yeah, every book apart from this one here was the same person.
And how was that after decades of producing these incredible works, moving on to working with another editor?
Well, obviously, if you have one editor for 30 years and you've done all your books with them, you kind of miss them. You kind of think that I always used to sort of joke that if you fell under a bus, that would be me done. But I never quite believed it. You always think it's. I think one of the good things is that I've been working in film and TV for so long as well, and theatre to an extent too. And there's such collaborative arts, and they've got a shifting personnel that that come and go. So you kind of think that it's always sad when you lose someone that's so pivotal to everything that you've done. But it gives you an opportunity to work with somebody else, and to kind of to learn from them, and to sort of to kind of to grow a bit as well, because you do get into a sort of comfort zone with one person. So it's nice to do that,
So speaking of that sort of cavalcade of arts and spilling out into other fissures, I want to move on to some of the incredible other projects that you've been working on. Particularly, I was wondering if you could induct us into the world of Trainspotting, the musical.
Right. Phil McIntyre is a kind of big West End producer in London, and they did We Will Rock You, and they've got kind of just about every big show they have in the West End. And I worked with Phil on this this play that I'd done, which was a very dark play, and everything that went wrong with it. You know, a couple of the actors got really sick. We lost one venue, we had to go into another venue, and it was a quite a dark, very dark play, and the critics hated it. The audiences liked it, but the critics hated it. And the theatre's very much a critic's medium. But Phil was great, you know, it's not really his thing, he's much more mainstream entertainment, but he really kind of stuck with it, you know, because he kind of valued the relationship. And he had said to me, you know, why don't you do Trainspotting as a musical? You know, we'll license all the tracks from the film and all that. And I was like, nah, I'm not interested. I can't see it as a musical. And I don't like the idea of licensing the tracks. And my partner, music partner, Steve, we started messing around, we started doing this like disco stuff, and then we started doing a bit of blues. Because we really just do techno, kind of house and all that. And I realised that Steve's really great at doing songs in every genre. So I thought, I said to him, how would you fancy writing if we sat down and wrote the songs for a Trainspotting musical? You know, so we did it, and we told, you know, we said to Phil and Paul Roberts, who's one of the producers of Phil McIntyre, that we really want to, we want to do Trainspotting, but we want to do it as a different kind of piece. It's not going to be like the movie, not going to be like the stage play, not going to be like the book. I want kind of some new characters involved in it. I want to kind of freshen it up. I want it to be darker than any of these things. I think it is. I think it's ironically, the play for, you know, the book for the musical is I think is darker than the actual book or the stage play, and certainly darker than the film. So, and we wanted the songs to start telling the stories. We wanted it to be a proper musical, because when you go to the West End, you look at some of these musicals, they're either plays that have been made into musicals, like Evan Hansen, for example, is a really good play, but they've made it into a musical because they get a longer run and make more money out of musicals. Or they're kind of stuff like, you know, they're kind of music biopics like Tina Turner. They're there to showcase the stuff that the artist has done. So I wanted to do a proper musical that the music would actually tell part of the story, you know. So we sat down and we knocked our plan out for 2 weeks. The first week we put down all the tracks, and then we went out on the weekend. We got absolutely slaughtered in Brighton, where the studio is. And then we had the vocalists come down the next weekend week. And we had Paul and the producers came down to Brighton from London. And Steve was putting all the finishing touches to the demos. And he was saying, go up and install them at the station. Because the studio is practically right underneath the station. So I was saying, oh, we're going to have a cup of tea first and all that, you know. And then, no, let's just get right down there, let's just, you know. So we got in just as Steve was finishing, basically. And then they loved it, you know, we played the tracks and we were really nervous, but they were blown away and said, right, we've got a musical here, let's do that. You know, they insisted that we licensed Lust for Life and Born Swiftly as the bookends. But we had all our own tracks, and for the rest of it, we wrote about 20 songs and used about 12. So we cast it and we developed it at the Evening Chapel. And basically, we're just waiting now on the theatres opening again, the West End coming back, because Theatreland has been very badly hit during COVID. It's the one that's taken the longest to come back. So we're just waiting to get a suitable theatre, and then we'll be going.
And we met up a while ago, and we were in Paradise Palms, a wee sort of cocktail bar, and it seemed like every character almost had their theme song. Someone had like hard rock, someone had disco, there was all these different genres of music just sort of piling into it. Then the waitress went by at one point, we were playing the Baillie song, and I could just see heads turning about what was going on there. So it's a real, you know, like the now Christmas albums, we're talking just as many But another thing I do once, I've written all these fiction stories, short fiction, drama, and everyone always asks, Welsh, are you ever going to write the autobiography? Are we ever going to see a non-fiction book for you? And I guess we're sort of tiptoeing into those territories today, because there is some filming going on for the documentary about you, about your life, about what you get up to. Tell us a little bit about that, how that's been for you. Did you get to see the private stuff, the shower scenes?
Yeah, I think I've kept the kind of the sexual stuff and the masturbation and the kind of and the toilet scenes to myself really, but it's like it's very strange having, because I'm not. I think, like, you know, most people, you know, I think I'm not very aware of myself really and how I interact in the world. Like, you know, I just think of myself as being a bit of a boring bastard that doesn't really do anything. And I look at all this footage coming out from like Miami and in, you know, Leeds and Brighton and London and Dublin and LA and you know, Ibiza and all these places that I've kind of been, you know, in the last year. I think, fuck me. I'm probably quite interesting, but not to myself. I'm probably much more interesting to other people than I am to myself. I think, what a fucking boring bastard. I'm more interested in other people than I am in myself. So it's like, it's very strange seeing that. It's very exposing as well. I find it quite strange because I'm, you know, pretty private. You know, you can throw this kind of sort of mouthy, sparey flat at the world, and that's like a scarecrow you plant in a field, and it's a way of, you know, people flock to that rather than sort of see you as a person, basically, which is good. You know, you can get on with doing your own stuff, but this is much more exposing in a way.
So what have you done with them thus far? Has it all been sort of public event based, or have you done?
It's been everything. It's been like it's actually like Paul, the director, was saying that it's actually good to do some book stuff now because you seem to do everything other than book stuff. We've done theatre stuff, we've done music stuff, me DJing, we've done stuff.
I'm guessing maybe you went to a Hibs game at one point.
We actually watched the Hibs Hearts game on TV. So some of my old Hibs stuff mates kind of stopped talking about that kind of stuff, and it was like I was on my best behaviour. I was the nicest person in the room. It was great. And they were like, "Fuck, I don't know." Yeah. We've sort of, you know, it's, you know, been in Miami, and it's like we're going to LA and hopefully going to Ibiza as well. So there's quite a suite, you know. I mean, we set up with myself, Steve, and Carl Logan, who's the editor of DJ Magazine, an old friend of mine.